What's going on, comic fam? This is the Marvelous One. We're going to talk about two pretty sensitive subjects for collectors, LCSs, pretty much everybody in the industry. We're going to talk about variants and speculators. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel for more content. So, variants, right? Like everybody talks about variants. People love them, people hate them, people want them, people don't want them. So, to give you a brief rundown of variants didn't always exist. Some people think they did, they didn't. The first variant was Man of Steel #1 in 1986, written and drawn by John Byrne. And that was truly the first variant that was ever made. It was a variant cover to the original. It was a cover B, and you could say, oh, Muncie, what about, logo variants, price variants, Whitman's, that doesn't matter. Those weren't real variants. They weren't made as variants. They were just things that people did. All right. Things that the companies did on the side. They weren't made to be a variant. So variants really started in 1986, and they didn't really get going until around the 90s, the early 90s. Now, I figured it'll blow your mind. Because people talk about this all the time. It's a huge misconception in the industry that variants had something to do with the crash in the 90s, the comic crash in the 90s, or they just assume it did. They're like, there were variants everywhere. Look, comic variants had next to nothing to do with the crash in the 90s. There wasn't even that many variants in the 90s. I know you're watching this and you're like, Muncie, you're crazy. I was there. I saw there were variants. No, there wasn't. I'm sorry. If you really look at it, there wasn't that many variants. So yes, you're going to be like, oh, there was die cut covers. There was everybody was polybagging everything, polybagging it, sticking trading cards in them, polybagging everything. You're like, oh, they, glow in the dark covers, foil cover, chromium cover. Chromium was so huge in the 90s. Everything was chromium. Hell, they would have made chromium pants if they could have and sold them. You were all like, oh, I remember the first chromium book I got. Oh, it's chromium. It's awesome. Look at it. It's chromium. It's so cool. Those weren't variants, people. They weren't variants. They were cover A's. They were gimmicks to get you to buy the comics. It wasn't like there was 5 covers and like cover B and cover C were a die cut and a chromium. No, they were cover A. They weren't variants. There weren't that many variants. So yes, of course, when McFarlane relaunched Spider-Man #1, there was 13 variants. Okay, yeah, sure, there was 13 variants. Gen 13 #1, there was 13 variants. Yes, that's quite a few variants, but that had nothing to do with the crash of the 90s. The crash of the 90s was bad business practices and stupid business decisions and a lot more. I can do a video about it sometime. If you want me to do a video about the crash, the comic crash in the 90s, and comment or send me an email, I'll be glad to do one, but that didn't have anything to do with it. So what I'm getting at is, are variants bad? A lot of people think they're bad. A lot of people think they're bad for the industry. A lot of people don't like them. A lot of people say, they're bad for the collector. Now, this one I don't get at all. I understand, maybe 20 years ago even I could see that, but there's not that many people that are buying every single cover of a comic anymore. There's just not. There's such a small percentage. Like, I don't even know anybody that does that anymore. There's so many covers, and there's been retcons and reboots of the series. It's just not even feasible to do it anymore. So I don't really understand where they're coming from with that logic. It's not that it's hard on the collector. I really think the only person that variants is hard on is the LCSs, which I know some people don't know what LCS is. It's just an abbreviation. It's local comic shop. If you're watching this and you don't know, I'm sorry. We abbreviate in the comic industry. We abbreviate everything. So there's been a lot of variants, but the variant craze, honestly, it really got crazy in 2011. That's when it started getting absolutely crazy, and they were making an insane amount of variants, and it just started to get nuts from there. But think about that. If there was a lot of variants in 2011. All right, just for an example, uh, Godzilla #1 came out. There was a Godzilla #1 that came out in 2011. It had 104 variant covers, 104, and probably the second. I think it's the second highest variant cover count was ASM, which is Amazing Spider-Man, by the way. ASM 666 in 2011 had 145 variant covers. 145. You imagine that? 145 covers. So it started in 2011. So think about that. That was a decade ago that they were printing all these variants. If it was so bad for the industry, if it was so detrimental, how did it last for a decade? It's because people are buying them. People want them. People want to buy them. People want to buy variants. They're still buying them. They wouldn't make them if people didn't buy them. So I don't get where people are coming from with this real hatred for variants. Now, I don't think they should make as many as they do. I think it's a little crazy. Walking Dead #1, the reboot in 2018. That was the worst whatever. It had 253 variants, 253, and 157 of them were store variants. Can you believe that? 157 store variants. It's absolutely insane. So yeah, I think that's too much. Like, I think they need to cut back. But I don't think it's bad for the industry. I think it's perfectly fine, and people buy them. And the other thing you got to remember, when you look at people look at the sold numbers. They're like, oh, how many copies sold? That's not accurate. The sold numbers aren't accurate. Those aren't sold numbers. People like to use that word, but it's not. Those are how many copies got distributed. There's no study that shows how many copies actually got sold. So when you look at X-Men #1 in 1991, when that came out, it's the biggest selling book ever. I don't think anything will ever beat it. It sold 8.1 million copies. See, even I say it sold. It's just easier to say it sold. It didn't sell 8.1 million copies. That's how many got distributed. So we don't know how many got sold, because it would be really hard to get that information, because all the comic stores would have to say, okay, I sold this many. Now, is it close? It's probably pretty close. Most of those stores, but in the last few years, the companies, they overship to make the numbers look bigger, and they do a lot of things like that. They do different kinds of incentives for stores. So those are actually shipped numbers. They're not sold numbers. So I don't think they're bad for collectors. I think it's hard on the stores, if anything, because it makes ordering hard. Like I'm having to order Moon Knight #1 this week. Moon Knight #1. I'm trying to, and it's got like, I don't know, 10 variants on the order, and I'm like, God, which ones do I order? How many of each one do I order? Which one's going to be hot? Which one do the customers want? So it makes it hard on the LCSs. I don't think it makes it hard on the collectors, but variants don't hurt the industry at all. They don't. They're just a fun thing, and people like to buy them. And if people stop buying them, they'll probably stop producing them. But people aren't going to stop buying them. Especially with the increase of the store variants. Last year, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Last Ronin #1 came out in 2020, and it had 76 variants, and most of them were store variants. I think it had two regular variants, and the rest of them were all store variants. And if you don't know about that, what it is any comic book store can sign up to do a store variant, and you have to do 3,000 of them. It's a little different with indie books. I'm not sure the numbers on indie books, but like if it was one of the big two, DC or Marvel, you can sign up, you can pay, and you can have your own variant, and you can pay the artist or whatever, and you can have a store variant. So all the stores started doing it because it's big money, because they can sell a store variant for like, $25, $50 or something like that. And then you can limit them because it's 3,000. You could do like a 2,000 of a regular cover and then 1,000 of a virgin cover. So, you sell the virgin cover for like, $60 or $100 or something, you're making a lot of money if you sell them. So, I think people are a little touchy about variants. I understand it. You think they're flooding the market, but they're not. These orders are made months in advance. We place these orders months in advance. They know how many they're shipping out, so it's not a big deal. So there's a quick summary of variants. I'm sorry, if you don't agree with me, that's cool. I mean, everybody doesn't agree, but that's how it is. They sell, they know how many variants they're putting out, and that's it. So the next one is is a real touchy one with a lot of people, and it's speculators. The speculators in the market, the guys that are buying up multiple copies and flipping them on eBay, or pulling books out of the dollar bin because some character showed up on some TV show, and flipping them on eBay and driving the prices up. And a lot of people hate these guys. Store owners especially hate these guys. You should see the retailer pages I'm on. Every week they're talking smack about speculators. Every week. Some of them, these are their customers, and they're talking smack about it. So I have no problem with speculators. I really don't. Most of them are nice guys. I've met them. I've met a lot of them. I talk to them. If you're letting some guy come in your store and buy 8 copies of the hottest book off of your shelf, then that's your fault. It's not the speculator's fault. At this day and age, you should be limiting your customers to 1 to 2 copies of a book off the shelf, even if you're a huge store. So if you're letting this happen, it's your own fault. So don't get mad at it. And don't get mad at a customer for wanting a book to be worth money. We're in a collectible market. They're buying collectibles. Of course they want their comic to be worth money. Of course they want to buy a comic off the shelf, and next week it'd be worth $100. Tomorrow it'd be worth $50. Why does that make people mad? I don't understand it. They think they're getting one over on somebody. They're like, oh, they're trying to get one over on. It's not. I leave them on the shelf at my store. I don't care if it's $50 on eBay. I let people come in and buy it. It's part of the market. It's good. It's good for the industry. Speculators pulling books out of the dollar box and pressing them and grading them and putting them on eBay, and then they're going for $300 because they appeared in the new. That's good. That's good for the industry. It's not bad for the industry. I don't understand this hatred for speculators. They drive the price of books that nobody thought about. And like I said, most of them are really good people. Most of them read books. Most of them get comic boxes. They're not just speculating. I mean, I've seen some guys that are just speculators, but even those guys don't bother me. I don't see a problem with it. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. They're just wanting to make money off of something just like anybody else. So you got a $3.99 book on the shelf. If you don't want to sell it for $3.99, then you shouldn't be in the business. I don't know what to tell you. You'd be perfectly fine with getting $3.99 with it today. Then why aren't you perfectly fine with getting $3.99 for it tomorrow when it's going for $25 on eBay? It doesn't make any sense. I'm happy for the speculators. So, this is a short video today because I know what I'm talking about. I had it set up. I don't think I think they're touchy subjects for a lot of people, but I don't think they should be. Variants are perfectly fine. They don't hurt the industry at all. I promise you, they don't. They're not doing anything. Should they cut them down a little bit? Sure. There shouldn't be anything over like 4 or 5 variants is just too many. So, but they're not, if you make 200 of them, it's not hurting anything. They're still selling. People aren't enjoying them. They're buying them. And speculators, they're not doing anything but helping the market. They're driving prices. Sure. If you're the one paying $500 for a book when it's super, super hot, and then it's $200, well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You're buying it at the hottest time, and you're taking a chance on it. It's no different than playing the stock market. So that's not the speculator's fault. It's your fault for, wanting it right then. So that's pretty much it, y'all. I appreciate you watching, Comic Fam. Shout out to all my boys. Deuces, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to get some more content on. Make a comment about what you want to see. I'll be glad to make a video about anything. I appreciate you watching. Hit that subscribe, hit that like. Thanks.